millions of Holocaust survivors has left the world. At the opening of Yad Vashem's Holocaust History Museum in 2005, Elie Wiesel charged us with the responsibility of being the messenger's messenger. We are gathered here today on the first day of the mission and what was once a great synagogue, the new synagogue. Today, all that remains is this monument. By participating in this mission, we make a commitment to all victims and survivors of the Holocaust. We will be your messengers. We will continue to pass the torch of remembrance from generation to generation. I am honored to invite Ms. Gracie Agad and Ms. Shira Stein to lay the memorial candles. I am honored to invite Ms. Gracie Agad to recite a passage from Scrolls of Fire by renowned Holocaust survivor and author Alba Kovner. Please.
Can there be a pain like mine? And so it was in the middle of the day, and Miko, oppressor of the Jews, came to the gate of the city of Mainz with all his army. And when the Jews saw the huge mob, a great army in front of them, they clung to their Creator and prepared for battle. All of them, men, women, and children. With Rabbi Kalonimus of Parnas at their head, they went out to fight the bearers of the cross and the burghers. And the enemies triumphed, capturing the city gate. The battle continued until midnight. At midnight, the Archbishop of the town sent a messenger to Rabbi Kalonimus, offering to save him and his entire community. When they did not believe him, he gave them his oath. The messenger led them across the Rhine River in boats and then took them to the Archbishop's castle. The very next day, the Archbishop told him, "I cannot save you because your God has forsaken you. Accept our faith or suffer for the sins of your forefathers." Filled with bitterness, Rabbi Kalonimus brandished a knife and threw it at the Archbishop. That day, the whole community died in the sanctification of God's name. And in their last moments, they cried out in one voice, "Look down from heaven, see what they have done to keep your name and our name free."
I am honored now to invite Ms. Shira Stein to read a passage from a testimony by a Holocaust survivor, Chava Ben Yehuda Nichaimov, a young girl from Wrocław, who speaks about watching the destruction of the synagogue right here where we are standing.
In 1936, my whole family moved to an apartment where our windows faced directly into the Gestapo headquarters. We lived on the 6th floor, and on the right side of the balcony, we were very close to the Great Synagogue. On Kristallnacht, my mother was the first to awaken and see the sky colored in red, the synagogue in flames. She immediately woke us all, and we were told to pack a small suitcase since no one knew what morning would bring. The next morning, at exactly 8 a.m., with German precision, the doorbell rang. They came to arrest all Jewish males, including my father. My father turned to us as he was being taken and told us to remain at home, not to worry, and he hoped to return soon. From the window, we saw lorry after lorry taking the men to the courtyard of the Gestapo right outside our building. Only later did we know my father was taken to Buchenwald, where he was imprisoned for the next 2 months. At 12 p.m., we were told that the Germans must blow up the synagogue since the roof might cave in following the huge fire, and it would be dangerous for the Germans. The orders were to open our windows so they would not shatter when they bombed the roof of the synagogue, and to wait in a room that had no windows. The roof of the synagogue was very strong and did not explode until the third bombing, its final destruction. As we exited the room, we witnessed our apartment full of glass fragments from the synagogue all over the floors. The total destruction of Kristallnacht.
My heart and soul. It is my past, present, and future. It gives me perspective on every life occurrence, whether joyous or solemn. It forces me to feel grateful even at my lowest points, and it offers me a zest and love for life that some may not always understand. My name is Rachel Faiga Schnee, and I am a grandchild of 4 Holocaust survivors. My name alone... Okay, like that? Okay. My name alone represents so much history. You see, the original Rachel Schnee, my grandfather's baby sister, was murdered in the Belzec gas chambers at the tender age of 6, and was one of the 1.5 million children taken from us. She was a victim. Faiga Schnee was my incredible, strong-willed, and beautiful grandmother, who escaped to Russia and was forced into a slave labor camp in Siberia. She was a survivor. In the most devastating of circumstances, I feel fortunate to carry the names of these 2 holy souls. Rachel, the victim, in me, fuels the responsibility I feel to share and memorialize. She feeds the strong sense of urgency I feel to teach as many people as I can about the horrors of the Holocaust. Faiga, the survivor in me, ignites the passion I have for teaching Torah, Jewish values, and ensuring continuity. And that is exactly what Yad Vashem represents. Its meaning, a place and a name, refers to memorializing those who perished and honoring those who survived. Walking through the haunting structure of Yad Vashem, I cannot help but feel as though I am looking at the faces of my brothers and sisters. Those strangers in black and white seem so distant, yet they all have a face that seems familiar. My grandfather, Simcha Horowitz, is actually one of those faces. He is in 2 photographs in the Liberation section, one in which he is proudly carrying an Israeli flag, coming off of Aliyah Bet from Germany and arriving in then Palestine. The other, him rejoicing with other survivors as they listen to Prime Minister David Ben-Gurion declare the state of Israel outside the Knesset in Tel Aviv. How did he and hundreds of other Auschwitz survivors transform themselves from helpless prisoners into fearless soldiers ready to fight for their own Jewish statehood? Just a few years prior, Simcha, my grandfather, was a Hasidic little boy, the son of a great rabbi in Lodz, Rabbi Yaakov David Horowitz, and the youngest of 7 boys. He was forced to watch his father be hanged by the Nazis. His mother and 4 of his brothers were murdered in Auschwitz. Simcha survived Auschwitz and went on to becoming one of the founders of the Israeli Air Force and fought in the War of Independence. 70 years later, on January 27, 2015, last year, I was fortunate to return to Auschwitz to commemorate the anniversary of the liberation with my grandfather, his children, grandchildren, and with 102 honorary survivors from around the world, Baruch Hashem. The Nazis' goal was clear and simple, to annihilate every Jew. Did they succeed? After sharing 4 awe-inspiring days with the survivors and their families, it was clear that the Nazis' objectives was defeated. The message related in beautiful tributes by both Ronald Lauder and Steven Spielberg was that the world can never forget, especially in these days of rising anti-Semitism and the existential threat to the state of Israel. 70 years later, we defied and we resisted. We paused our busy lives to honor, to memorialize, and to simply acknowledge their existence, something so simple yet so profound. According to Jewish law, when a person dies, we hold a huge responsibility and follow strict rules to make sure that their lives are properly memorialized. All of that for one life, one Jew. Performing all of these acts are the highest form of any mitzvah in the Torah because we do not receive anything in return. It is the most selfless act possible, and yet 6 million could not receive the same honor. By traveling to Poland and Israel for this trip, by your involvement with Yad Vashem, we continue to attempt to diminish the pain, the suffering, the dehumanization of not only their lives but of their deaths. I always tell my students, look past the number because it is completely intangible. Rather, think of every single life as an individual like you and I. I show them a family tree and what 2 people can create in just a few generations, hundreds of branches. The Talmud states saving a single life is like saving an entire world, but I cannot help but wonder just how many worlds one can destroy. We must always remember that the Nazis did not only murder 6 million, but they murdered every single possible generation that could have, that should have, come out of those beautiful souls. Millions upon millions. As our group walked down the same tracks in Auschwitz that led over 1 million Jews to their deaths, a group of Israeli Air Force soldiers walked past us. With snow falling around us and only the light from our candles illuminating our faces, We took the once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to stop and sing Hatikva together. The words pierced through to our core. Lihiot am choshi be'artzenu, to be a free nation in our home. The exact same words that many sang as they were forced into the gas chambers, never imagining that their dreams of Zion, of an army to defend us, of a homeland would ever come true. As survivor Roman Kent said so beautifully in his speech at the commemoration, we survivors do not want our past to be our children's future. I cannot urge enough how important education and tolerance are. As part of the young leaders of Yad Vashem, I find it imperative to spread awareness to as many people as possible, Jew and non-Jew alike. How lucky is our generation that we get to play a game of Jewish geography, consisting of which day school, summer camps, and teen tours we attended, while I overheard the survivors at dinner playing a similar game but with names of towns, ghettos, concentration, and displaced persons camps. It was an honor to meet many of the survivors there, and being in their presence changed many of us in a profound way. As we sat under the tent that canvassed the entrance of Auschwitz-Birkenau, we were in complete awe to be experiencing such a moment in history. Tears streamed down our faces as we listened to the stories of the survivors, each its own miracle. Mr. Kent continued in what I think was the most bone-chilling statement of the trip. A moment in Auschwitz was like an entire day. A day was like a year, and a month an eternity. How many eternities can one person have in a single lifetime? How is it that those 102 survivors, pure angels sitting a few feet ahead of us, endured so many eternities? That question will forever be lingering in my mind. As my grandfather holds my hands, I thank Hashem for those hands. Those hands are so strong, so powerful, yet so gentle and vulnerable. And what will we do with our hands? Our hands of privilege, of freedom, of life. I ask him, Papi, I just don't understand. How did you survive? Without hesitation, he simply said, my name is Simcha Michael. Simcha means happiness and gives me mazal. Michael is the angel Michael who is always watching over me. Why is it that I, Rachel Schnee, standing here before you, get to live a beautiful life with endless opportunity, while the 6-year-old Rachel Schnee never had a chance? We may carry their names, we may tell their stories, but we can never forget their sacrifice. It is Yad Vashem that has ignited the fire, and it is us to spread the flame. Participants of the Yad Vashem leadership mission, we are standing together today at what was once the forced labor camp of Wolfsburg, a place where prisoners were forced to dig into the mountain as part of a megalomaniac project, where so many lost their lives, a place in which despair would have been easy and understandable. Jean Amory wrote, in Auschwitz, reality imprinted defeat in the human spirit. We can say that here, even if just for one fleeting moment, the human spirit imprinted defeat in the regime of the camps. I am honored to invite Ms. Helena Kaczynski to read an excerpt that was written by Rabbi David Halivni, a Holocaust survivor who at the age of 16 was imprisoned in the Wolfsburg forced labor camp.
There is no society without worshippers. There is no time without someone who prays. There is no place that cannot be transformed into a place of prayer. And there is no human being who does not, in the privacy of his house, embrace a silent prayer, open the hidden powers to redeem him from his distress, to improve his condition, and to better his lot.
I am honored to invite Ms. Sari Granitsa, Deputy Managing Director of International Relations at Yad Vashem, to tell one story of this camp.
We all toured now the tunnels that were dug here. I have been telling the story, or I've learned about Naftali Shtil, and that you all heard his story in the tunnels by your guides. I have been telling the story I heard it, I think it was the first story I heard from Shaya when I came to work in Yad Vashem some 13 years ago. But only in February, when I came here with my colleagues to prepare for this important mission, and we arrived here, and we went into the tunnels, like Shoshana, I started crying, because only then did I understand the spirit that Naftali had to be able, after losing his wife and his 4 little children in Auschwitz, after being deported here and working in this horrible labor camp, day in and day out, 24 hours, 7 days a week, and still sell his piece of bread to buy a piece of paper to be able to daven on Rosh Hashanah. Survivors who were here, all he wanted was to be able to gather together some 10 men to have a minyan, to be able to daven. And he asked the officer to let him have a small ceremony. And the officer was in a good mood. And he said, fine, instead of breakfast, you can do whatever you want. Many of the prisoners were willing to skip breakfast that morning of Rosh Hashanah. And they gathered together, and the barrack was full. And Naftali said one verse out of his prayer book, and the rest of the congregation repeated after him. Naftali survived, as we heard, and he immigrated to Israel. He remarried. He had 4 little children. And when he told Yad Vashem his story, and he gave us this paper, he asked if we were willing to keep it. Of course we were willing to keep it. It was our privilege. But he only had one request. He asked if we were willing to give it back to him, or if he can come and get it every year before Rosh Hashanah, because he wants it, because he uses it every Rosh Hashanah when he's the cantor in his community. But we never had a chance to keep that promise to Naftali because he passed away just less than a year after he handed us these pieces of paper. Naftali gave us these papers in '88. In '70, as you all know, one of the prayers of Rosh Hashanah is the Unetan Tokef, which is such an important prayer in the Musaf of Rosh Hashanah. In that prayer, we say, who goes to death, who dies and who leaves, who by starvation and who by choking. And to us, it's something that is very vague. To these people here in this camp, it was something very, very realistic.